Welcome to Load the Boat with Zach. Now, those who know me know I love fishing upriver and chasing those Guntersville smallmouth and spotted bass. It is so fun. A lot of people until DC won the MLF here this year in 2025, up fishing upriver below the dam, catching smallmouth. A lot of people didn't even know that Guntersville had them, but they do. And in today's video, I'm going to show you how to target these bigger spotted bass and smallmouth on Lake Guntersville. So to start with, in order to catch these fish, you got to know where they are, location. Where do you want to fish? Now, spotted bass can be found all over Guntersville. You know, on the main river, every creek has spotted bass. If you are wanting to catch a smallmouth, though, you're unlikely to catch one unless you are north of the BB Comer or south of the 431 bridge. Your best chances are closer to either dam. I've found that I catch more smallmouth closer upriver below the Nickajack Dam, but I still have caught a number of them closer to the other dam, particularly in front of Honeycomb and along the bluffs going south of Browns Creek area. So if you want to catch these fish, you know, try to get close to either dam if you want smallmouth. Now, if you can catch spotted bass anywhere, but when you're talking about smallmouth and spotted bass, what you want to look for is, number one, you want current, you want rock, and you want depth. Those are the three ingredients for both spotted bass and smallmouth. They're very, very similar. They are just fish that love the current. They are a lot more willing to be in that current than largemouth. Now, when you're fishing for a smallmouth and spotted bass, you're still going to catch some largemouth. It'll surprise you sometimes, but when you're fishing like this, you're gonna catch more of the spotted bass. Now, after you found those three ingredients, the next thing that you're gonna want to figure out is what lure to throw. So I have a number of lures set out before me, my favorite lures for targeting these fish, and the lures that are suited to fishing those kinds of locations and cover that we talked about. Number one lure when we're talking spotted bass and smallmouth, I feel on Guntersville, you cannot go wrong with a jerkbait, particularly this one that I have in my hand right here, the Vision 110 Plus One Junior. It catches all kinds of fish, but man, there's something about a jerkbait that drives these smallmouth and spotted bass crazy all times of the year. They love a jerkbait. They will come up, 10-15 foot off the bottom to kill a jerkbait. Now, another thing that I didn't mention, you can see this one right here is one of my favorite colors. It's got some flashes, Tennessee shad. It's got a little bit of chartreuse. That's a great ingredient. Whatever you choose to throw, if you don't like any of these lures I have set before me, one thing you want to keep in mind is a color, and that is chartreuse. I'm not a diehard fan of any particular color under most circumstances, but if I'm particularly targeting smallmouth and spotted bass, regardless of the watercolor, I will always try chartreuse first, because there is something about that color. Just like the jerkbait drives them mad, the color chartreuse drives them mad. It just catches them on Guntersville. Don't know why, but they tend to really like that chartreuse, and if they will hit it, that's something that they can see from a large distance away. Spotted bass and smallmouth, I feel, tend to be more sight feeders, while largemouth tend to use more like their lateral line. They're big on that vibration. So the color chartreuse is something to definitely keep in mind. And when I'm throwing this jerk bait, I'm gonna target the rock. I'll work it along the bluff walls, along riprap, beside bridge pylons and current seams. Those are all good places to throw your jerk bait. Across points, especially if you have wind. A jerk bait is a bait that you really have to pick up when it's windy. It's a little bit of wind along some rock will really fire up that jerk bait bite. So this is my number one bait and one of my favorite lures to throw. Period. Any time of the year. If they're not on the bed, I'm throwing a jerk bait. Now my second favorite bait to throw when I'm fishing upriver, downriver, for if I'm targeting spotted bass and smallmouth, is going to be a swim bait. And you can see I cut this off my rod. This is a chewed up little bait I was catching them on here recently. Something about a small swim bait will really go and drive these fish wild. So there's something about spotted bass and smallmouth. They really like small baits. Even the bigger ones will go and chase these small baits. You can still, I've caught a lot of big largemouth on small baits. I love ultralight fishing and things, but spotted bass and smallmouth both really like these small baits. I don't know why, but they will go. They don't mind having a small meal and working for a small meal. Maybe it's because they eat and chase a lot of small bait fish. But a swim bait is great, and it works really well. You can do the same thing. You can let it pendulum parallel to bluff walls. You can work it along the riprap. You can cast it along bridge pylons and current seams. You can cast it out, let it hit the bottom. Pop your rod up right away so you don't get snagged in that current, and just let this thing bump along the bottom, and you'll catch a lot of spotted bass. They tend to be on the smaller side, but it'll surprise you. There's some big ones upriver as well, and you'll occasionally run into a nice smallmouth. Now when I'm throwing a swim bait, I like one when I'm using like this little a 2.5 2.8 size swim bait. I like one with a smaller hook. Looking for a 1/0 hook. What you want is I tend to throw between 3/16 and 3/8 depending on the current, and if they're up in the water column versus down on the bottom. If I'm bumping bottom, I'm looking for a 3/8 head that's got a smaller 1/0 hook. It'll penetrate better, and it fits these baits a lot better. And when the water is dirty, is when I prefer that Kitech or the X-Zone Swammers. Those are my two favorite baits if I wanted to pick just two. If the water is dirtier, those are the two I'm going to pick up. Anywhere between the 2.8 and a 3.5 size swim bait is going to get you the most bites, and is my preferred size when I'm targeting these fish, because they do have the smaller mouths, and they're definitely wanting to chase these smaller baits very well. If the water is very clear, if it's we have high sun, good visibility, that's when I'm going to go with something with a little bit less movement, a little bit more natural. And also if I need to get down really deep and that big boot tail is slowing it down, throwing a little Kitech Easy Shiner or the Crush City Mare is one that I've had good success with. And I really like both of those. I've had plenty of 50 and even had some 100 fish days on that little 3-inch Kitech. But the 2.5 Mare is a bait that I really like and have done well with as well. And the good thing about the Mare is it's made out of a tougher material than the Kitechs. So you can get a lot of fish catches per bait. You're gonna go through a number of swim baits on a good day, and you'll catch a lot of white bass and things. And the smallmouth and spots, white bass, they really shake their head a lot, and they'll do a lot of damage to your swim baits. So having something that's a little bit more durable is a lot easier on the pocket. I ain't got a lot of money. If you do and can afford to throw soft baits, more power to you. But the mares will last a long time. I've gone all day with just one bait before. All right, so that takes care of that. And these are, if you only wanted two rods, these you can fish and you can catch them all times of the year with just these two baits. Next one though, you can't talk smallmouth and spotted bass without talking about the Ned rig. This is one I cut off my rod. You can see the chartreuse. The Ned rig is a great bait year round for the spotted bass and smallmouth. It's a small profile that they love, they can't resist, and it doesn't have that any kind of tail. So when they're the real negative, sometimes that do nothing action is what they want. And the Ned rig is something that you can drag along the rocks and let it sink down to the bottom and drag over rock piles and things, just like you would swim your swim bait through. You can cast it and let it sink down along these bridge pylons and go into the bluff walls. Letting this sink and pendulum down these bluff walls is a great way to catch them with a Ned rig. I've had real good success downriver around like the Goat Island area in Honeycomb on the Ned rig, doing that along the bluffs there. And one little trick. I like to start off with a lighter weight, like using like a 1/10 or an 1/8 of an ounce to start with my Ned rigs. And I do that because a lot of times they'll hit that on the fall. If I notice though that I'm not getting bites or I need to get deeper, I will go up on the weight. Sometimes they want something zooming past them. If I'm not getting bites but I think there's fish in the area, that's when I'll try a heavier weight, because sometimes if the water is really clear, they'll need something zooming by them to trigger a reaction strike. When the water is a little bit dirty, that slower fall will give them more time to track it and get a hold of it. And also, I came up with a little retrieve trick when I'm throwing these things. I noticed I was getting a lot of followers one time. So what I do is when I'm casting this Ned rig, what I'll try is after I get to the end of my retrieve, I've hit the bottom or gone down deep enough to where I think there's not any fish deeper. What I'll do is I'll do like a hair jig retrieve, do a few quick turns, stop, and then reel it in. Because sometimes these fish will follow it down to the bottom and they still won't hit it there. But that quick reaction, that quick zoom by the face when you're pumping it up, will sometimes trigger that reaction strike and make it to where you don't see that 5-pounder just turn away at the boat. So keep that in mind. Experiment with your when you're reeling it back to the boat. Do a quick burn stop before you go and reel it in, because that'll go and get you a few extra bites throughout the day if you try that. And as far as baits go, this is the Max Scent General. It's a great bait when you need a little bit extra weight. I use this when I'm wanting a faster presentation, or if you don't have quite the right setup for a Ned rig and you need a little bit extra weight for casting distance. This is the way to go. And I like this with when I'm using faster retrieves. When I need to slow it down, or I'm dragging and dead sticking a lot, that's when I'll go to the Elastec, because when you hit the bottom, it'll float up, and I think it looks a lot better in a slow presentation. And if you need to slow your fall down, if the water is dirty and you need a slower fall, that Elastec floats. And if you don't have the right head size, going and just using a floating plastic will slow that fall down for you and help you out. And these things are are tough. You'll go through your head before you'll go through one of these plastics here. Next thing on the list, man, you can't talk smallmouth and spotted bass without a drop shot rig. A drop shot is a great bait. I love going, and I'll let this pendulum down bluffs and work this off the shelf. I'll drag it down current seams and the submerged rock piles. These rock ledges and things. Going and having a drop shot on board is great when you're fishing smallmouth and spotted bass. And I'll typically start off with the 1/4 ounce weight, and I'm not pitching these when I'm fishing in the current really far. If you do a far cast with a drop shot in the rocks, that casting angle will get you wedged, and you'll go through a lot of weights, a lot of tungsten. So that's a little tip here. Don't do shorter pitches, especially if you're getting hung up a lot. I like to use an exposed hook anytime that I can. These fish are really aggressive, and sometimes they'll hit it so fast they don't get it completely in their mouth sometimes. So I like an exposed hook when I can get away with. I'll go as small as this little 2 1/4 inch crappie tube if the water is really clear and they're finicky, or if I'm around smaller fish. But I've caught plenty of 3 and 4 pound smallmouth with just this little tube, and I'll go up to like a 6-inch worm as well, just depending on the water color and what they're feeding on. But you cannot go wrong with a drop shot. And so I held this up already. Another thing that I like to bring up river and down river is a shaky head. A lot of times around these bluff walls, you'll have a place where like some trees have fallen in, and those areas can really hold some fish. But if you cast something with an exposed hook in there, you're gonna get snagged up. So I love having a shaky head in those scenarios. I'll have anywhere between a 4 and 6 inch worm, depending on what kind of current and things I'm dealing with. But a shaky head is great for fishing the laydowns around these bluff walls. You can drag it down the rocks. And another thing that you can do with these shaky heads is when you get upriver, there's a lot of numerous laydowns, and sometimes these fish won't be on the rock. Sometimes if maybe the water has risen or it's slower current, they'll pull into those trees and things sometimes, depending on what time of the year. So going and pitching a little shaky head into these trees is a great way to get a lot of bites. It's amazing. Sometimes you can get 4 or 6 fish out of a single tree. Now I tend to catch smaller fish out of the trees, but you can catch a ton of them doing it. Sometimes almost every little lay down. When you're pitching these into the trees, isolated is better. If you find one isolated along the rock and isolated lay down, that is going to be better. When I'm running a lay down pattern, I'll look for that, and I'll also look for the trees that are sticking out farther than the other. Because if you got a million lay downs, look for the biggest one, the brushiest one, and pitch your bait into that. Another bait that you cannot go wrong with when you're fishing for spots and smallmouth is a tube. I had a tube on a drop shot. I'll have a tube on a normal little tube head. You can throw a normal tube, or you can throw one of these small downsized tubes as well. These are great bait. I'll use it in the same places as the Ned rig. I'll let it sink down around bridge pylons. I'll hop it along the bottom around the submerged rock. This is a lure, a profile that just gets bit. So don't sleep on the tube. You can go and you can drag it, you can hop it, you can just kind of work it almost like a jig head minnow. Just kind of shake it as you're going in, and it just works. It looks just like a cross scooting across the bottom. This is a good bait, and that wide head gets you snagged up a little less. But again, make shorter pitches. if you're getting snagged up a lot, and that angle will help you keep from getting wedged. With all these dragging and bottom baits, you want to make sure that you're not making too far of a cast when you're around these rocky areas, and also make sure you keep some tension in your line. Even when you're pausing it, keep a little bit of tension, because if you lose tension, what's going to happen is that current is going to go and get it buried down in the cracks of the rocks, and you're going to lose a lot of baits. You're going to mess up your spot that you're fishing. So make sure if you're fishing around that snaggy areas, keep a little bit of tension. That little shaking your tree really helps you feel what's going on down there and keeps it from getting wedged into those really tight spots. So don't sleep on a tube, and keep that line tension in mind. Last bait that you 100% have to have when you're fishing for these spots in smallmouth is a top water. Again, chartreuse is great. You can throw these little downsized baits and still catch a ton of fish, but it will surprise you. Even the really small fish, you'll have fish the same size as your top water come up and annihilate it. Spots and smallmouth are very aggressive fish, and you can throw a full-size bait, but what I would do is make sure if you're throwing a full-size bait, make sure you're throwing one with 3 treble hooks, because these fish, they're so aggressive. They will come up and they will hit this thing. It'll fly up out the water. They hit this thing really hard, and they don't always get it in their mouth. They're in schools a lot of times, and they will aggressively go and hit these things. So make sure you're throwing a 3-hook bait. Try to make sure you have lighter wire trebles. You don't want real big trebles, because these fish oftentimes aren't going to get a good hold of it, and you want to make sure you're getting some hook penetration. I'm going to throw these top waters. I like walking baits a lot, and I'm going to throw them around shade lines on the bluff wall. Keep the sun in mind, and work it along the shade lines. These fish will suspend and sit in the shade lines along the bluff walls, and the shade lines in bridges. These schools will work those as well. Also, like when you're going in and pitching your shaky head and stuff around laydowns, a lot of times you'll have bigger trees sticking out over the water, and they'll create little shade pockets, and you can have a lot of fish just sitting right there, and you can work it over points. Keep an eye on schooling activity as well. But these things are great to throw. Keep them on deck as well. Keep it at the ready in the summertime. I have these things hanging off my deck at the ready, so I can pick it up when I see schooling activity. Especially if they're not pulling a ton of current, they will go and chase bait out into the middle of the lake. They'll sometimes start busting up behind you. So keep a top water at the ready. They have small mouths, but you don't necessarily have to throw a small top water. They will readily hit big baits, even if they aren't very big themselves. Targeting these smallmouth and spotted bass near either end of the dam is probably not going to go and win you any tournaments, but it's a very fun thing to do in tough times of the year. If the fishing's tough, the spotted bass and smallmouth are much more aggressive and will bite much more readily than largemouth. They're not going to be as affected by weather systems, things like that. They're not going to go and be shut down. That they're living in the current, they feed in the current. That's what they are worried about. So if you find these rocky areas, if you find the areas that are getting hit by current, you're going to find some spotted bass, and if you are in the right area, you're going to find some smallmouth as well. Now you're also going to catch some meanmouth. If you want to know if your brown fish that you catch is a smallmouth or a meanmouth, open its mouth and look at the tongue. A smallmouth will have a smooth tongue. If it's a meanmouth, it'll have like a little rough patch on the tongue, just like a spotted bass will. That's a way to know what you're catching is is a pure smallmouth or not. These fish are so fun to catch. They will jump. They will shake their heads, and uh, it is a blast, especially on when you're using these baits, on light gear. It is so much fun. There is nothing that fights like a river smallmouth. So use these baits, fish these areas, and you too can load the boat.